Attention gamers. If you were to talk to doctors or nurses, they will tell you that caffeine or prunes or a high-fiber diet is the best solution for chronic constipation, but I always resort to just reading the latest patch notes, as RIOT's decisions never fail to make me shit myself, and boy oh boy, they've done it again with changes to one particular item. Now I have to choose my words carefully here, because YouTube's favorite pastime is to demonetize me on repeat, to the point where the phrase Raid Shadow Legends becomes a part of my vocabulary just to put food on the table, as people are saying I hit rock bottom in the comments, all because I called this kid a twinkle shit and I refuse to change my style to fit into your content policies, Miss Susan Wu, zits on my face. But I can't risk that, so today we are talking about the changes to African American Cleaver. They've made it double proc off of items and certain champs kits, which bottom line means that in less than a second you can get full 5 stacks, turning squishies into true damage recipients and turning tanks into squishies. So today we are going to show how absurd this is on 2 specific champs, so please politely abuse the piss out of my subscribe button and let's get into the games. Okay, game 1, I was dressed up as Gerard Butler from 300, you know the whole, lead a small group of Greeks through some dangerous lands and then curb stomp some big-titted chick, yell this is Sparta, and we all get a little pre-game profit. I'm playing up top against one of those sophisticated canines who become unkillable by the late game, and even though my cleaver tech would fix that, I welcome the visit from little Peter Pumpkinhead, who agreed to cry on weaponized Clifford as long as I stabbed and shanked him until he passed away. I then hit a quick lunchtime walk down south to get my steps in, but also because I heard rumors that there would be an assassination attempt against Barack Obama's wife, and even though I was a dick freckle too late to stop the heinous act, I could at least identify the shooter by her unforgettable bosom and then immediately dish out the punishment. Then, as I was headed home, because only fools leave a Gnosis in lane alone, I was jumped on the street by a walking arcade game and his pet Demogorgon. I thought this was the end as my physical health dwindled, but a combination of my kit being dank, this particular Beedrill being defective, and the buddy system countering his passive, and I lived to tell my grandkids the story of how that Roly Golem was a bitch. I then went back top really just to get an updated tally of how many stacks this posh puppy is rocking, so that I could prepare my anus appropriately for the late game, but luckily for me this pumpkin is a pal, so we stuck to him like jizz sticks to saltine crackers, and with that I was on a spree of killing. I decided to book another business trip south to see if big-titted Becky learned her lesson from last time, as I arrived via skydive to do a bit of burst to the big-handed school bus before backing away so that I don't have to get introduced to the tower. But I wasn't about to report back to the big dog up top and tell him that I just left him alone for 2 minutes for nothing, so I joined forces with my favorite depressed dwarf-sized mummy and we hit them with the wrap around. Rolly gets rocked and then I forcefully request an autograph from the pop star, knowing it'll be worth more once she's dead, which ends up launching a bit of a butt clencher for yours truly, but thank goodness this Arya's first day on the job status, as I end up escaping one bard's fart from meeting my maker. And speaking of greedy players being bad and paying the price, check out this superb play by their cost 6. I decided to pit stop for a blue buff on the way back top, knowing that the Gnosis I left up there alone 5 minutes ago would be a much different Gnosis than the one I was about to meet, but remember I have the buff cleaver now, which means in literally 1 second I remove 30% of his armor, which in the presence of an ADC means he won't be around for much longer. This funded my second item, which aside from also being able to triple proc my black African American Cleaver, I could also play Bursty the Busty Buccaneer, which is a super easy game to beat before watching a bunch of orange crystals pop out of dead people's corpses and being rudely called back to say hi to the dead man's plate that Gnosis now has. I said cool, but I gotta go, and I will also be taking all the armor from that item with me. Whoopsie, hopefully it doesn't make your interaction with a Caitlyn feel miserable. Side note, the strategies on this channel require a very high level of skill and thus should not be attempted by everyone. Turns out, beyond my own knowledge, there was a small bounty tied to the head of any ADC on my team. I guess it was a League subreddit sponsored event which left my Rift family in shambles, but it wasn't going to deter me from taking it back to 2013 and finding out what the fox says. Then I ignored this MF's offer to give me directions back to base, saying I know my own way bitch, I'll walk there myself. Psych, air parachute bazooka boy incoming as I nosedove 6 screens behind those shitters, which left Obama's wife in a bit of a predicament, but nothing a bit of burst couldn't solve as Miss Unfortunate met a top laner, and then I proceeded to put this blitz back on the shelf where his golem ass shall gather some rust. I could just feel a boner on a local Cossacks at the sight of this Senna, and even though I tried my best to protect the president's waifu, I made sure in the end that the crime of cherry picking easy kills like a bitch was punished. At this point we got assigned a group project entitled Deal with the 400 stack Gnosis Rav left alone in lane all game, but unfortunately for him these auto-filled solo queue players were now my boys and I was going to be remembered as legendary. You see, at this point in the game you could tell there was some 1v9 potential brewing in this big beagle, but a quick 5 stacks of cleaver are the best medicine to cure that bullshit. I decide to do what I would call limit testing and any good player would call positioning like a dumbass, so let's just say thank God Uncle Rito decided that Blitz Hook didn't touch me because it let me live long enough to beat up Beedrill for a bit before having to deal with Blitz and Nos, which went just about as you would expect. With me curb stomping Snoop Do double shred on this cleaver, which means double dead on this late game believer, before devoting my attention to this musty gym locker who seems to have fascination with shaking people's hands. You see, typically an abandoned dog at this point in the game is an unkillable menace worth bitching about on Reddit, only to get your post immediately removed by the turbo virgin moderators because it's not some pro play copium highlight bullshit. But with this cleaver tech I can keep him vulnerable around the ADCs in my family, which means he melts like a cheap piece of Gruyere on the sun, and no matter how many times he tries to come back he is just going to get slapped on repeat. I then of course say hey to Ninetales and politely ask her where all her health went, and so with the beefiness that cleaver gives plus the supporting armor shred for my team and the rest of the burst I have, it's not surprising that this was an easy win, with my damage wiener being the biggest of the bunch after the game. Game 2 I chose to play She who carries around the world's largest stapler, and I was against Reginald the Reptile, who knew that early game was his only hope of slicing and dicing this Senna, but turns out when you push harder than a constipated man who doesn't know to just read Riot's patch notes you get ganked, and since I am the master baiter TM I'm gonna put my own ass on the line to make sure he has no options to get away from the 8-eyed Jedi who will be benefiting from my armor shredding capabilities later. Then you scratch my back, I scratch yours, is what my delusional mind was thinking when I panned down and blatantly stole a hard-earned kill from Calcep himself. But fortunately he didn't tell me to kill myself and start running it down like I'm used to, and instead stuck around knowing that Reginald would be more greedy than a streamer who plays plinko balls on his kick stream. I tell him to go in the tall grass and sit still, which prompts an apparent temper tantrum as he's all slashing and dashing with a small hurricane circle around his large crusty body. After seeing 2 of them burn their flash I start to feel like a third will, so I'm just like fuck it and decide to wrap the zombie ankles around this ratchet ass reptile, which ties him up long enough for us to win a game of patty cake on his dead corpse. This unlocks my cleaver, which means my best strategy is to follow around this sped Jedi and abuse the new changes to make sure no one around him has any armor, which seems pretty foolproof considering he's slightly fed at this point. That said, this is silver, so at 17 minutes the game evolves into full-blown ARAM as I have to channel a large-ass wind tunnel to spare my team's dizzy dancer before I arrive to the gangbang myself. I wrap the zombie hands around this ELO inflated mermaid's fishtail as he is more overextended than a dislocated elbow, which results in casualties from both sides. And the theme of me being a danger to my team as a top laner by flat out ignoring my own lane definitely persists in this video, as Reginald is up here playing knock knock who's there with the inhibitor, so I have to rush back as he's like I just took your tower bitch, and I'm like I just took your tower bitch who, but I accidentally kill him before he can end the suspense of that particular knock knock joke. But because ADCs are very in meta right now, plus we have a Master Yi, it makes my job very easy as I just sit around with the boys huffing copium out of my giant Cuban and making sure any enemy within our vicinity has no armor whatsoever, which is why you are seeing everyone melt in our presence. Not to mention my range is gig along my auto attacks slow, they make this Nami say nani and the kills start stacking. I am just roaming around killing cameras when my own husband, the 44th president of the US of A, comes in thinking I'm not just gonna strip of his armor like I stripped him of his undies in the White House bedroom, but this time an 8-eyed samurai is going to be doing the finishing. Hey guys, back to Doom split pushing Reginald, who thinks his antics are going to result in anything but a bunch of us saying see you later alligator to him, which gives us all so much more gold that we put to use in the final team fight, which is more imbalanced than the state of this game after pretty much every new patch, and that, my friends, is my essay entitled, How Riot's Patch Notes Help Me Poop. Please subscribe if you haven't. Rav out.